Oh my goodness, we are back. Hi, everybody. We're so thrilled to have with us Ann Harrison. So, Ann is the author of The Spirit. Oh, I love that clap. The Spirit of Creativity, Inspirational Poems for the Creative at Heart. 3 of her previously published books are in the process of being revised and rebranded. She's also been published in several anthologies, including a devotional entitled God Things, Hope for the Hurting. And she did that alongside Jen Lowry and 15 other authors. Aside from her work as a Christian fiction author, Ann is a professional freelance writer. She also hosts the Inspirational Journeys podcast, where she gives authors, creative artists, and entrepreneurs a platform to share their stories. When she's not interviewing special guests, she hosts solo episodes providing book reviews, reading selected poems, and sharing tips and encouragement for aspiring writers. Welcome, Ann. And you're showing your book. Flip it. It's yep. Oh, you're good.
Okay.
Just
Yep.
move
I
it
want
a little bit.
Oh, that this way.
Nope. Move it to your right. Yep. Move it just a little to the right. Oh, I guess your right.
My left.
Oh, your left. My right. So move to the right a little bit more. Yep. Oh no. Go. We're good. Stop.
Okay, yeah. Like I said, I wanted to show that off before we get started because let me tell you, that's a process in itself, getting everything done with an ebook. Before I get started talking about that and talking about the no excuses, I do want to remind people to like the video so that people can find it and go out and share it. And when you share it, tag me on social media so that I can reshare. I'll probably share this myself later, but do tag me so I can retweet you and share it on my social medias too. And if you're sharing it on Pinterest, go. If you are a WWJ, I don't know if anybody else can share that on the board, but go and share that on the Meet the WWJ's group board on Pinterest, because that is gonna, that'll help everybody meet us. So, okay.
All right, and I'm gonna drop off and let you shine. So I'll be around. Let me know when you want me to come back in.
Okay. All right. All right. So, no excuses. Everybody has excuses why they can't write, right? First of all, I want to say, Luke, you illustrated one of my points that no matter whether you have a disability or you don't, whether in my case you're blind from birth, blind at an early age, or you lose your sight all of a sudden, or if you lose it slowly, it doesn't matter what kind of disability, what kind of situation you have in life, you have no excuses. So now that I've shown my book, let me explain. First of all, I didn't think I could write poetry. Okay. But Jen, thank you so much. I know you're watching, for inspiring me to write first of all, the 50-word story, and you talked about poetry in your podcast, which actually ended up morphing into a poem. And I kept saying, I can't write poetry. This is rare. Well, as you read in the introduction of my book, let's just say that the Holy Spirit kept saying, you say you can't, but you keep proving that you can. And again, one of the things I like to say is, even though we can't, God can. Through God, gives us the tools and the techniques and the instruments we use to write the books. Now, for me, I use the JAWS for Windows screen reader on my laptop. I also have a braille. I've used a braille display, and I do have one, but it's out for repair, so I can't show you that. But I also use the Notes app on my phone to write down tidbits and notes, or I email them to myself. So that belays any excuses of writing ideas. Now, as far as designing the book, Jen taught in her podcast and on her YouTube videos, she taught us how to do a basic template, and she did a Word document template for me when she did the poetry book. And then Tish helped me do the vellum and the ebook cover creation, and my audiobook narrators, and Lillian Eves and Vincent Lee Grayson. If you are watching, thank you so much for producing the audiobook. Lily has a friend who does book covers, so he designed the audiobook cover and then outsourced the back cover. So, I mean, the paperback cover, and I got that done earlier this year. So even if you can't, whether you have vision or not everybody can design a book cover. If you can do your own book covers, then, go for it. I mean, and you know what you're doing, that's fine. But if you don't, it's okay to outsource, because, and even if you have to pay a small fee to outsource that, the book design, book cover, whatever, or getting an editor or whatever, don't let that stop you. If you have the budget, save up the money, whatever you have to do. Even if you have to do crowdfunding, I've not really done a whole lot of that, but even if you have to do crowdfunding, save up the money, because it's really worth it. So now that I've talked about how I got the book published, I want to go into a couple of excuses that people often have. And one of the excuses is, I don't know how to write. Yeah, you do. If you have a story and you have an idea, it's not that simple. I mean, not that simple. Listen to me. It is simple. It's not that simple to make it perfect at first. No. But for those of you who have vision, you take a pen, a notepad, or some people I've heard use sticky notes. You can get one of those, some of those little 50-cent composition books at Walmart, and start writing your ideas down there. And then later on, you can transcribe them onto the computer. For those of us with iPhones or with computers, with smartphones or whatever, you can use the Notes app. Like I told you, I do sometimes. You can email them to yourself on your computer. If you don't have email, that's okay. You still have, and you don't have a smartphone. For those of you who are visually impaired that may watch later, if you know Braille, you can use the Braille writer like I did at first when I started writing a book. And of course, it never turned out right because I was going through some tough times, and I ended up getting inspired. But the story ended up going south, big time. But anyway, but I brailled most of that out as I was writing it until I got my computer back in 2010. If you have some sort of digital recording device, even if you have an old tape recorder, which is obsolete, I'm Gen X, so I would remember that, you can still use that. I don't do well with tape recorder, dictation, that kind of thing. I don't do well with that, but there are so many people who do. So if that's your thing, then go for it. And what I want you to do is sit down and do the stream of conscious writing, just free write. And when you capture ideas, put them in a separate place, separate, document, separate journal, whatever you need to do, and use the one that calls out to you the most. And yes, I'm rebranding some titles, but I'm also working on some nonfiction, Luke, and Diana, if you're out there, because I'm developing a writing method called the plot stitch. Crafting your story, a writer's guide to crafting your story from inspiration to publication. And let me show you my illustrations, because I'm a crocheter and I'm a writer as well. So let me show you my illustrations, okay? So we're going to start with, this one is the novel. Michelle, can you see it?
Yeah, it's looking good. Maybe move it back a little so we can see yeah, that's really good. A little bit more so we can see the entire thing. Yeah, great.
Okay, cool. That's the novel. Let me grab my other, that's nonfiction. Where's the short story one? I know I'm fumbling around a little bit here. Oh no, I had my short story was a smaller one, and I had it. I did have it, and of course.
I know. I remember seeing you showing that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was
wait,
such
that's
a
the
nonfiction.
nonfiction. That's the nonfiction one, Luke.
Just move it closer to the middle. Oh, right here is good. Nope.
Yeah.
Go back. All right. Yep, you're good.
Luke, when you talk about writing nonfiction, the reason I plotted it, I use this as an illustration because nonfiction tends to be more linear. Oh dear. What did I do? Oh well, the short story is just a smaller thing. Sorry, Michelle. I swear
No,
I had
worries.
it. I had
it. Is the short story one
the little square?
One?
Yeah, the little square.
Oh, we saw something like that.
Oh, okay. Well, no, the little rectangle was the non. One. That was the nonfiction. The short story was a smaller square. Oh well, I'll find it later. I thought I had it, and I did have it, but I don't know what the heck I did with it. Oh well, it
Right.
happens. Anyway,
I'll let you go back.
yeah. Anyway, so what I did with the plot stitch is, since when I do my granny squares, um I have learned how to do the magic ring. So the beginning of your plot stitch is your story ring, which is your basic idea. The very seed, some people call them story seeds. The very first idea that pops into your head. That's your story ring. And then you just work, and I'm working through it, but you just work around the different, grabbing inspiration, taking notes, and then you work your way around to the ring or around the square. And you can always go back if you need to add some things later to certain layers of your plot, like the inner plot circle. You go back and add those, and then you come back out. So fiction is not as linear as nonfiction, though I am finding that nonfiction is not as linear as I thought it was. So, yeah. So you can pants your story, you can plot your story, or you can do like me and plants. I plot a little, I pants some, even more. And then I go back and plot some more. So yeah, I'm a planter, NaNoWriMo stuff. And there's another. So now that we talked about that excuse, there's another excuse. I don't have time to write. Okay. Well, the first excuse was I can't write, or I don't know what to write. That was in the same question, but the second excuse, I don't have time to write. Okay. But do you have time to hang out on social media and go down all the rabbit trails on social media? Do you have time to sit and chat with your friends, video chat, phone chat, whatever? Or are you in a busy season and you only have a few minutes? Well, let's say you have 5, 10, 20 minutes, whatever. That time, that 5 or 10 minutes that you're spending, I mean, you can get inspiration from social media and stuff, but that time that you're spend going down rabbit trails, it's time that you could spend sitting down and writing either your story or writing down ideas for your story. Oh, I don't. That's one of the things, and I've heard people on podcasts. Myrtle Lafferty, for one, has mentioned this. She's heard people say, "Oh, if I didn't have a full-time job, I would have 8 hours to write." Well, if you can't write for 30 minutes, then you're definitely not going to write for 8 hours. I've known that. And people say, "Well, I don't have. I'm not feeling inspired." Well, you know what? You don't always feel inspired. You have to go out and get the inspiration. That's another excuse. You have to go out and get the inspiration. This is why, if you listen to my podcast, the Inspirational Journeys podcast, you can look on your podcast player, Inspirational Journeys, Stories That Matter. You listen, I talk about um, read to get inspired. My big thing, that one part of my challenge, to read to get inspired, because you can learn a lot from reading your fiction, reading nonfiction, reading inside your genre, outside your genre, reading a lot. You can learn some from watching movies and TV, but reading really gives you the sense of dialogue and how it's written and how the genre is how it's structured. Gives you a sense of story structure and everything. So that's why I always say read to get inspired, but reading is not the only way you get inspired. I go outside and sit, well, either on my steps or in my swing now, and brainstorm. And this is one of those things, another part of inspiration. When Michelle was talking about building your characters, um, one of the things I talked about in my podcast as well is listening to your characters. Some people may not have that, the characters may not talk to them, but if you listen to your characters, then you will be able to have that conversation, know what the characters want, and sometimes the characters will have a conversation. And for me, the characters will have a conversation. The scene will play out as like a movie in my head. And but another thing you want to do, and I did not mention this first, and I do apologize for that. For those of you who are like, where is she going with this? The first thing you want to do, first and foremost, listening to your characters is one thing. The first thing you want to do is sit down and pray. Lord, what would you have me to write? What story would you have me to tell? And also write down any dreams that you have, because I found that dreams are very inspirational for me. So those are some of the excuses Or the self-doubting excuse, I'm not good enough. Nobody will like my what I write. Okay, first of all, for most a lot of us on this pod on this in this presentation, in this conference, I almost said podcast because I'm so used to doing that, are children of God. If you are a child of God, you are, whether you are or whether you're learning about Jesus for the first time, you are good enough. What you can't do, God can help, God can fill in the gaps, fill in the blanks. Okay? All you have to do is start from scratch. You got to start somewhere. A written words, a short story, a short piece of writing can be edited. But you cannot, I don't care how hard you try, you cannot edit that blank page or that blank screen. I've heard so many writers say that, and so many, so many podcasters, so many writers. Even Jen talks about honoring the blank page, isn't it right, Jen? Whether you pants or garden, as Jen likes to call it, or you plot, like the plot stitch that I'm working on, the snowflake method that Randy Ingermanson works on, and all these other different plotting techniques. Whether you pants or plot, you got to start somewhere. And your initial notes and initial ideas and character development and stuff, you don't necessarily have to edit that because nobody's going to see that. Journaling, nobody's going to see your journals either. So a lot of what your stream of consciousness writing can go in your journal, and that's what authors that I've talked to have said. Robin Lee Hatcher herself said that she does the stream of writing thing. So there's so many other, there's so many things that you know that you think would hamper you from writing, discourage you from writing, can be an encouragement to you. Because let me tell you something, folks. I used to be my own worst critic. I would write something, I would look at it, and I'm like, this is not good enough. This is not what I want it to be. Now I've learned how to mold and shape my stories, because I can't share the name of the song or anything like that. But there are a few songs that there's music that really touches me. And one song that really, it's called Wood by Dan Seals. And when I listen to that song, I think about a story. A story, when you put down the words, the sentences, the paragraphs, the pages, the chapters, all that kind of stuff, it's a building block. You take that first draft as your piece of wood. You're going to take it and you're going to shape it to what it's meant to be. Or what you can do is, if you want to consider it like a painting, your blank page is your canvas. Your words are your picture, your 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 portrait, and then you just mold it and shape it and add new colors, add new changes, add new phrases and words and actions, and cut out something. I don't know if you can cut out things in a painting, but you can also cut out, shave off. If you got a little too much wood here, a little too much there, you can carve it and shave it. And so that's what your story is all about. Whether you write nonfiction, fiction, articles, books. I write freelance stuff too. But I'm telling you now that you can do this. You've got this. You got to start somewhere. And the first step is to sit down and write. Don't make it perfect. Don't spell it out. Don't, and I'm bad about this too. Don't correct your spelling. Don't correct your edit. Don't worry about sentence length at the time. Just write it and then go back and do that later. Because I'm one of these people who are notorious to say, oh, I need to add this here. And then I see a mistake and I got to fix it. Well, why fix it if you're going to take it out? I have to, I'm preaching to the choir here, because I read that I listen to the writer on the NLS Bard mobile, the Braille and audio reading download, for those of you who don't know it. NLS is National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped, who also does it's from the Library of Congress, and they do Braille and what a lot of blind people call talking books, but what we now consider as audiobooks. I'd still call them audiobooks. And then and as far as reading, I planned on mentioning this before, but I'm going backwards and forwards, and I'm sorry if I'm losing people. If you got questions, let me know once I get done. But as far as reading, I'm going to tell you, the National Library Service is not the be all end all. that I used to think it was when I was a kid. I'd listen to cassettes and I'd read Braille and I would picture those things. But now you got a whole world open to you because you got the visually impaired have Bookshare, and now your Amazon Echo devices or and I got to be careful because you might go off, your Amazon Alexa devices can read your Kindles. You can also listen to voiceover, or you can turn on speak screen feature on your iPhone. I don't know about Android phones because I never use them, but you can read Kindles and EPUBs and all that stuff through the Kindle app, the Apple Books app. I have a voice stream reader app that reads different documents and texts to me. So there are so many ways to make books accessible and make books come alive. And like Jenna said, there are some audiobooks on YouTube. Even you can find those on YouTube. So whether you read with your eyes or you use your other senses to read, reading is so important as a writer. I cannot stress that enough. And going out, I know with COVID that's a little hard, but going out and listening to conversations, or if you can get on some, like I'm in the ACB, the American Council of the Blind, ACB community. I'm actually a member of ACB now, and if anybody watches later, hello to my ACB friends out there. But I started going to the community calls and I can get into some of these conversations, and one of the conversations I was in actually struck a writing prompt, which I'm going to challenge you guys with. You can do it now or you can do it later, but in your journals or in your blogs, there was a question. If you could be invisible for an hour or two, where would you go? What would you do? That's my question that's my prompt for the day. So, like I said, that's a starting point. And you can go and look for other writing prompts. That's where, if you're worried about starting writing, if you don't know what to write, well, there's something for you. Okay. Michelle, you may want to put that in the chat so that people can copy that and write that down and put it in their journals, because that's a prompt that I definitely want people to think about. And if you're going to blog it,
and I was already starting to do that. So can you do me a favor and repeat the question again?
Okay. If you could be invisible for an hour or two, just depends on how long, where would you go? What would you do?
Okay, great. I'm putting that in now. So see you
later. Thanks. Okay, so I mean, I could come up with a bunch more prompts, because there was one time when I first started the podcast, I was at Walmart with my family. We were doing some shopping, and this is before COVID hit. This was back in 2019. And this kid behind me, he was standing there talking. He said something about umbrellas and chairs. I'm like, umbrellas and chairs. What can I do with that? So I wrote that down, and then Jen was talking on her podcast about a hook and a ladder, and that was another one of those random. So any little random tidbits, random stuff. I mean, you could have a folder called random stuff and just write down words and phrases that come to you in the midst of conversation, whether it be online or whether you're out and about, or if you hear something when you're watching a movie, or on TV or on the radio or something. You can definitely grab those nuggets, because it might spark something. But what I was going to say before Michelle had to ask me that question again, and I'm glad to repeat it for those who are not actually watching the chat right now. If you are, fine. If you're not, let me know. But anyway, what I was going to say was, oh great, now I lost my train of thought. What I was going to say was, go ahead and tag me on your social media, or send me a link to your blog post. I may write that prompt on my blog so that people can ping back to that, because I want to see what your responses are. I'm going to have to write that one myself. So those prompts are very interesting. So do tag me when you share stuff on social media, because I want to see what you come up with. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to do a challenge, and I know I'm not really long-winded, because I'm not long-winded on my podcast. So if we have time, I'm going to challenge you in the chat. Michelle, I'm going to need your help. In the chat, I want you to come up with the writing excuses that you've had, or any writing excuses that you can think of, and let's throw those excuses out the door. Because I'm going to take a quote from the Writing Excuses podcast that I listen to every week, and this is not my quote, this is theirs. But after this conversation, but you see, now when we get done, you're going to be out of excuses. So what I want you to do after this conversation is go write. Okay, so let's see some excuses. Michelle, do you have one first?
Okay, I'm asking people to start typing. Okay, so writing excuses that you had or you can think of.
And if you've got any questions, you can throw those out there too.
Sure. So there was a question from Tish. What was the shift in your life when you decided to honor the blank page?
Oh my gosh. Lord, we're going to have to go back to high school because I have a friend of mine that I'm finally started talking to. She was doing a story and she got me encouraged to do a story. But the shift in my life that got me started writing Christian fiction, or, in a Christian realm, I have been a victim of verbal and emotional abuse. And I was climbing out of the pit of despair. This is where music comes in. And I have that one particular artist, but I was also praying, and I was also trying to figure, I told the Lord, I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. You're gonna have to help me. I was ready to throw my hands up. And then that's when I had the dreams and the music was connecting and some spiritual experiences that I won't go into here because I don't know a lot of people's level of, what your beliefs are. I'm not going to, throw my beliefs in there, but Tish knows what I'm talking about because she and I have talked about that. Anyway, and then I started having dreams of weird climbing dreams. And I consider myself climbing out of the pit of despair. When I was listening to the music, I started having this idea of the story that, and I think I ended up losing that whole I ended up dumping that one because it just wasn't working for me. But still, I had that whole that writing, that itch to write again. After going through the tough time, I wrote my very first book back in the early 2000s, 2008, or maybe even before that. But which was not a very good publishing decision that I made. We won't go into a lot of detail there, but let's just say what I've learned from that one and one other publishing decision: do not use a vanity publisher to publish your books. There are too many self-publishing options, and there are other publishers and agents out there. Go back and watch Cami Larson's presentation if you're looking for a publisher. But anyway, yeah, don't go with a vanity press. They will nickel and dime you to death. Anyway, right. So.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. So. Okay, that's fine. But that was basically the shift that got me really into it. So, anything else, Michelle?
Yeah, I'm starting to see some excuses that folks are putting in that they've heard. Luke has a really good one. I don't know all the details of how the story will work out, so I won't write until I do.
No, that's okay. We're gonna quash that one right now. You don't have to know all the details. You just have to have the ideas. You have to listen to the Holy Spirit, and you have to listen to your characters. The details will come to you. I still don't know all the details of my story, and I'm in the editing process. So no, you can't just say, "Oh, I won't write till I know all the details." No, because then you'll never write. Because what you got to do is get started and let the details come slowly. Don't rush the process, and trust your process. Okay, Michelle.
Okay. So Ruth has an excuse putting on there that she's heard. Sometimes I feel discouraged because I don't know what to write.
Again, that's where your inspiration comes in. That's where your reading comes in. That's where you have to sit in silence. I got a couple of instruments, but the one I really use a lot when I'm writing is I'm not gonna play it unless somebody asks me to, because I don't know how it will go with StreamYard, but my singing bowl. See this?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't plan on this, but hey, that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes the Lord works in mysterious ways, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Cool. So I have a question that came in from Luke. What would you say to someone who's written a poem or book but is timid to share that with others, even with beta readers.
Okay, you've got to let go. You've got to put your book out in the hands of readers. Just because not everybody's going to like your stuff, okay? And I've known that. You can't write something for everybody. I'm going to go back to what Diana said. You got to know your audience. You got to know who your book is for. If you don't, and maybe you may not know that when you first get started, but as you're writing, then you realize who it's for. You do your research to say who you ask yourself, why am I writing first? Why did I write this poem? Why did I write this book? Who is it for? Who am I reaching out to? Who is the Lord? Why is the Lord giving me this? Okay? Because my poem, Tears of an Angel, the Lord I was out walking around the house, around my mother's house at the time, because my tiny house wasn't ready and all I had was the camper. But anyway, I was out walking around the house. I said, Lord, what do you want me to write? And then Tears of an Angel the words just flowed into my spirit, out from my heart to my fingers to the keys to my blog to my Facebook page to my book, everywhere. I had to share that out, even though it's now in the book. It was one of those that I had to share out because it was something the Holy Spirit knew that somebody needed that. So that's what I'm saying. You just have to trust God and trust your process.
Awesome.
And put it out and let it go. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So I see from Tish, she says, how do you write when your routine is changed, such as power outage or loss of Wi-Fi?
Oh my gosh, Tish and I have talked about this. Oh, that is a difficult one. I'm still trying to work through that. But sometimes you can journal. If you don't want to write something that you want to share, you can journal about the whole process. You can journal about that whole thing. Tish was saying I needed to blog about that. I've struggled with that one. Believe me, this week, like I said, the devil's been on my shoulder. I've struggled with that. But I think now I can write about that. So if you have routine changes in your routine, you either journal if you have, like when your power's out and you still have battery life on your phone or your computer, or if you have a pen, paper, recorder, whatever handy, write down your thoughts. Get the anger, get the frustration out in your journal, which no, I did not do. Preach it to the choir here. But get that out and then think about, okay, so what can I do? What can I do? Even if I couldn't, save what I was working on, I could have written a new document. I didn't, but I could have. But I went outside and the day was, maybe it was God, maybe the internet going down, I'm going to be honest, was God's way of telling me to go outside. Because I don't know, Michelle, if you heard this, but I've shared with some other people my hummingbird story, how the hummingbird, I was sitting on my steps and a hummingbird has come up to me. Yeah. Well, the hummingbird came back. I was sitting in the swing and I heard of the wings and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's my hummingbird buddy, Yep. So awesome. He or she came back to me. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
So I see Tish sharing a rejection. She said, I'm dealing with the fear of rejection. Pray for me.
I'll do that. Well, you know what? And I'm going to tell you one thing that Tish, you know how Mur Lafferty celebrates rejections, right? Okay. So, no, if Michelle, you got to listen to the I Should Be Writing podcast or go and watch at Mighty Mur on Twitch because she streams those and she'll ask for rejections. She celebrates rejections. Even though rejections are a hard thing, they are a part of your writing career. They don't, just because somebody says no, that doesn't mean they're saying no to you. They may be saying no to your story because it's not a good fit or because you need to work on it. That's not saying no to you as a writer. And I'm kind of quoting a little bit, paraphrasing a little what Mur says because she's got a lot of tips on that. But but a rejection, look at the rejection. And now I don't like the silent rejection where they don't say anything at all. I've gotten some of those trying to submit to magazines and stuff. Yeah. But the silent rejection is a hard one. I do agree. Yeah. It is really hard. But when you do get a rejection letter, look at that. See if there's any positive things, positive advice,
Mm-hmm.
Because I had one story rejected and said there's no conflict. And then
Okay.
that show versus tell. If you don't know what show versus tell means, you're going to be confused by that. But the more
Mm-hmm.
you write, the more you learn. And the more you listen to other writers, author
Mm-hmm.
interviews, and things like that, the more tips and advice you'll get. But then once you get those tips and advice, you don't have to follow everything. Do what works for you. Okay, Michelle, anything else?
Yeah, and I was gonna say sometimes that fear of rejection before you even do anything stops you from writing. So
Yeah.
don't cut yourself off from the process anticipating that you're gonna get rejected.
Right. And maybe the reason you got the rejection is because that's not where God wanted you.
That's a very good point. Yep. So Luke says, how do you come up with the writing prompts you share?
Some of them, I'll have to give you a link to a website that I have on my favorites. But not only that, it's sometimes it's writing prompts like from the Writer magazine. They used to do them. They haven't done them in a while. But you can go to the writermag.com or search for Writer magazine, and you can look at those prompts. And there's several prompts there. Sometimes it's just words and phrases that I've heard, and like in the ACB community now that I'm a part of. In ACB, the community calls, sometimes when they're social calls, but they're facilitated by people, sometimes the
Mm-hmm.
people will have questions that I can use as writing prompts. Like I was telling Desi that her invisibility question was a good writing prompt. She asked another one, but I forgot what it was. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes and sometimes it's things that you can that people talk about, conversation that strikes up the writing prompts, and sometimes Jen throws them out to her listeners, and then I just take somebody else's challenges and throw them out to my people.
Yeah. Awesome. I saw some feedback. So Eli had said from the rejection. So Tish and Luke were both mentioning that as well. Present your work to those you know. Trust that they will be truthful and provide good feedback. If a review feels like a closed window, find one that opens. Never give up on your dream. I love that.
I do too. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Tish is saying thank you to everybody for the good advice. She's going to keep reminding herself. And Jen had shared a scripture, so 2 Timothy 1:7, for God had not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. And this verse can bring comfort and peace. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. So, and I am curious in terms of, so I'm always advocating for the people who are just getting started and who just need a next best step. And I think the writing prompt might be it. So what is one takeaway that somebody who's just starting out, who's been making no excuses and have decided no more excuses, what is the next best step for them?
Put your butt in the chair, put your hands on the keys, or pick up your pen and start writing. That's my first step, because you got to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then read to get inspired and to learn how other people do it. Don't copy what people do, but use the books that you read, the articles that you read as models. But yeah, Put your butt in that chair, grab your pen, or put your fingers on your keys or your screen and start writing.
Awesome. Yep, absolutely.
Michelle, did you ever have an excuse? Because I don't know that did you ever have an excuse that you had to quash?
Yeah, absolutely. I am my worst critic. Yep. And I just want to point out that the excuses that you're crushing, sometimes you'll have to crush the same excuse more than once. Sometimes it's a continual process. And I find that that's okay. I was so worried that I had to get over being my biggest critic. It's something that I constantly have to do, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to be like, well, now I use that as an excuse. Now I have to conquer all my excuses before I can write. No.
Writing is what's going to conquer the excuses. Mm-hmm. And another thing, too, that I wanted to mention that I forgot was people say, you hear authors say, write every day. If you're writing in a busy season, go back and watch Tracy Murdoch's thing from the youth summit, because she talked about writing in busy seasons. Sometimes you don't have the time to write every day, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't write every day. I can't. I don't want to rush that process. I mean, and I may write most days. It may not be the same, like on my book. It may be on a blog. It may be something else. But writing every day is not. It's something that authors do. That a lot of authors feel like they need to do, but it's not for everybody. Don't try to put yourself in a box.
Absolutely. So we have 2 more questions. So one is, how can being a part of a writing community help you overcome excuses?
Oh my gosh, that's one of the best things you can do, because if you're a part of a writing community, like the WWJs, or for those of us, for Luke and myself, like Behind Our Eyes, the Organization for Writers with Disabilities, and I'm on a couple of Discord writing groups. Being a part of a writing community is great, because not everybody's going to get what you're doing. Not everybody's going to get you. You may talk to like your friends and family about your writing, and they're going to be like, yeah, sure, whatever, or you're not making sense. Tamara Woods talked about that on one of her presentations she did for the Women in Publishing Summit that Alexa Big Wharf hosted a couple of years ago. But you talking to other people who are writers, they'll know how to help you brainstorm. And sometimes talking to readers, I talked to my brother-in-law about one of the things that I was telling him about the book, and he pointed out some things. I've had to do some more research. So my trajectory, if I could say that, try saying that word, or the structure of the story changes. It's a whole new paradigm shift in my writing life, because it changed. So sometimes you have to do that.
So building community, or finding community, not just of other writers, but also readers too.
Yes, finding readers and writers, because readers know what they want. And readers have expectations, but also finding the writing community. You got people who can look at your work and give you honest critiques and feedback, because you show it to your friends and family. Oh, that's good. I love it. Everything. That doesn't tell you anything. You need somebody who's going to give you the honest feedback, but not be harsh to the point to make you want to stop writing. Because I've heard that some editors can do that. Can be very harsh about, what needs to change.
And I think that is when you have a protected community, right? There's going to be the folks around you who are going to uplift you through the challenging feedback. Yeah.
Remember 1 Thessalonians 5:11, which Jen talked about yesterday. That's where that verse comes in, because you need some people who are going to encourage you, not knock you down.
So I see a question from Ann. She says, what's the best time to write? What is your best time to write, aka your protected time?
Okay, it depends. Sometimes I can do it like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning to 11, because there's a new social media called Clubhouse, and Tish has been in there before, but there's a room in there called Good Morning, Good Night, Either Way, Let's Write, from the writing room, or either the writing room or the writer's room. There's 2 of them, but there's one club that and there's this lady from England, and I'm a co-host of that too. I can open that, but we do 45-minute sprints, and then we talk for 15 minutes. Or there's another one that does 50-minute sprints, and we talk for 10 minutes. But I do that. Sometimes I watch live streams on Twitch and YouTube to get some sprints in. So it depends on the day. Sometimes I haven't done that in a while, because I'm a little older now, and if I don't sleep well, I get cranky. But I used to write. I used to write at night. Sometimes I can write in the evenings, but I used to write late at night. But I haven't done that in like a couple of years. I think I've only done that once or twice since I moved into this tiny house. So yeah, but it varies.
I see that we're hitting up on 12:45, so I just wanted to close out with a good one that I saw. Dia Irby says, one excuse, is there really an audience for my work? I think that's a good one to wrap up with.
Oh, yes. Again, yes, not everybody likes it, but like Diana Needham, Dale Roberts, and then Luke talked about this morning, or yesterday and this morning, you need to know who your audience is. But yes, there is an audience for your work. The more you can refine your audience, which I'm still working on that, the more you can refine your audience, the better. Because even though you have an audience, your small audience, they're going to tell their friends about it. They're going to share you out. If they really like you, they're going to spread the word about your stuff. And you may find people in your audience you didn't know that were in your audience, and it's because somebody who you've defined has shared your work. And that's why it's important, and I'm discovering that myself, that's why it's important to build that platform. So podcasting, YouTube videos, building your social media platform, speaking engagements, that kind of and even guest posting on other people's blogs, doing newsletter swaps, the email list. That's why it's important to build that platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have your fans already behind you when you hit publish.
Fantastic. Well, and this has been really enlightening and really just encouraging. Not to make excuses. So I'm gonna let you just close out while we get ready for Pooja, who's coming up next.
So basically my final words is, listen to all the advice, but do what works for you. But don't hesitate to sit down and start writing. You don't have to have a plan. You can plan as you go, which I learned that myself. But you can plan as you go. But at least start somewhere, even if it's just the story ring, as I call it, or the story seed, just the seed of an idea, the hint of an idea, a dream that inspires you, a song that gets stuck in your head that God is trying to give you a message through. Yeah. Anything like that, just write it down and then expand on it later if it's near and dear to your heart. You don't have to know all the details. I don't know who said that, but no, you don't, because you're not going to. You're really not going to.
Absolutely. Well, Ann, you've gotten a lot of love in the chat with excellent job, Ann. Thank you. I love this so much. So thank you for sharing all of that with us and encouraging us. So as Ann said, just put your butt in the chair, start writing, and stay with us today. We'll see you back here at 1:00 with Pooja, who will be talking about self-care for authors. We all absolutely need it.
One more thing really quick.
Sure.
When you touch one life, you've touched thousands. So like I said, as they say in the Writing Excuses podcast, you're out of excuses. Now go write.
You are. We've taken all the excuses away. So
yep.
All right. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank y'all so much. Oh, there's my little square.
There you go. All right.
Just show it off before we
with you all.
All righty.
All right. We'll talk to you.
See you guys around in the conference in the chat. Bye.
All right. Bye.